The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps.
But I think that, but I can't get past the core fact about Walz, which is he presided over, allowed the biggest city in the state to get burned down.
And seemed to not only allow it, but kind of
he liked it.
Support it, you know?
Well, yeah, did you see the video of his wife saying, I kept the windows open so I could smell the burning rubber from the riots?
I did not see that.
Wow. The wife whose hand he shook.
Oh my God. By the way, I mean, I know it's picking on a little thing, but who the hell shakes their wife's hand?
Greg Gutfeld and Tucker Carlson never need much prompting to take aim at a politician, especially one practically begging for ridicule. Enter Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a man who's made a career out of pretending to be the responsible adult, while governing like a teenager who just found the key to the liquor cabinet. For Gutfeld and Carlson, this isn't just commentary, it's target practice.
Politico lingers on candidates' fingers and defend Walz's wide eyes as they claim beards are for bad guys. Tyler, speaking of beards, and I mean the one on your face, not the one that you hang out with.
Let me just say that Walz and every other governor who did anything like that is a monster, and I think on some level he will be punished for it. But no, I admire what you did enough that I hope I'd be man enough to do it myself. I took minor risks during COVID by pointing out things that seemed true to me, but I didn't do anything that heroic. I think it's absolutely essential. Clearly, we're moving toward an authoritarian state. I think we've already arrived. I think your life is a testament to that.
It's like Walz handed them a peanut with his own name on it, blindfolded himself, spun around twice, and dared them to take a swing. Gutfeld dives in first, radiating the smug confidence of someone who's been saving up sarcasm all week. He barely needs to try. Walz makes it easy. Gutfeld doesn't see a governor, he sees the self-appointed president of the Department of Dull Excuses.
Wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough? That's like telling Joy Behar she's not eating enough Doritos. That's like Jasmine Crockett saying, I gotta black this up. That's like Bud Light saying, hey, you know what? We could use more Dylan Mulvaney.
Every botched decision, every headline that reads like parody Gutfeld packages it all with the precision of a stand-up veteran. Accountability seems to give Walz hives and Gutfeld exploits that like a cow on an oat milk farm. He opens fire on Walz's so-called leadership, which apparently involves locking down the state like it's a federal prison while giving crime. A police escort through downtown Minneapolis.
So I'm the law-abiding grandma that was sentenced to 90 days in jail for opening my business during the shutdowns as a peaceful protest when Minnesota Governor Tim Walz unconstitutionally and illegally shut our businesses down. So my question is, if you were in my situation, would you have done the same thing? Or what would you have done?
Well, I flatter myself by imagining I would have done the same thing, because I think what you did is honorable and necessary.
Gutfeld calls out the absurdity of a governor who treats criminals like misunderstood artists and law-abiding citizens like reckless toddlers. It's not policy, it's experimental theater, and the critics are not impressed. He roasts Walz's pandemic-era hypocrisy where restrictions were remixed like DJ tracks small businesses shut down while big box stores stayed open because apparently viruses respect corporate square footage. Then comes education under Walz classrooms became therapy. Sessions, reading scores nosedived, math scores plummeted, and bureaucracy ballooned.
Dude, you're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. So Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Gutfeld rips into the notion that equity has replaced arithmetic, where 2 + 2 equals whatever makes everyone feel good. He compares Walz's education approach to handing out participation trophies for logging onto a Zoom call. Then he pivots to the economy, describing Walz's Minnesota as a case study in how to turn success into chaos. Taxes climbed like squirrels up a bird feeder, and businesses fled like the building was on fire. According to Gutfeld, it wasn't leadership, it was an exorcism in need of a priest. By the end, Walz seems less like a governor and more like a case study in how far charm can carry sheer mediocrity.
Who is Tim Walz exactly?
It started sort of with picking up on just these little lies he would tell. He never was a command sergeant major, despite the fact him, saying that he was. He never attained this rank in the military. Instead, he abandoned his troops, and they were deployed to Iraq without him, and he ran for Congress. So I've always felt as a reporter, if someone lies about little things, they're lying about big things.
That's a principle that stands the test of time.
And Minnesota has become, the home of this defund the police movement. It was on the ballot. Minneapolis did not vote to defund the police, but I would say in every way, shape, or form, they defunded the police. You have Minneapolis Police Department that's lost about 40% of their cops since George Floyd. But instead of being
Minneapolis lost 40% of its cops in 5 years?
Nearly half, yeah.
Then Tucker Carlson enters not with jokes, but with the cold precision of a historian analyzing a battlefield. He doesn't shout, he doesn't need to. He simply peels back the layers of failure like a rotten onion. He starts with public safety, or as he puts it, public surrender. Under Walz, Minneapolis didn't just defund the police, they gave them a farewell tour. Crime didn't rise, it performed a dance routine in broad daylight. Walz's answer: shrug and hand the mic to the local activist network, as if slogans were substitutes for security.
5 years ago this summer, George Floyd, a convicted felon, OD'd on fentanyl outside a convenience store in Minneapolis, and the country changed forever. 5 years later, Tim Walz is still the governor. Keith Ellison is still the attorney general. The cops who were falsely convicted of murdering George Floyd are mostly still in prison. But what happened to Minneapolis itself? Well, it's been wrecked, and no one has said a word about it. But I just wonder about this story in particular. Did he have contact with Walz? Do we know that Walz has Walz said, I met this guy ever?
Well, this is what's interesting. We know that he served on a board appointed by Walz. However, I'll say that...
what kind of board was it?
It was a workforce development board.
Carlson doesn't stop there. He points out that Walz closed churches but kept liquor stores open as if vodka was sacred and faith was hazardous. Press briefings sounded less like governance and more like instruction manuals for obedient citizens. Carlson paints Walz as the type of leader who thinks people should request permission just to take a breath. Education Carlson grabs the scalpel. Where Gutfeld went for gags, Carlson zeroes in on ideological overreach. He says Walz didn't reform. Education, he replaced it with reprogramming. Teaching kids to resent their own state isn't civics, it's propaganda wrapped in lesson plans.
People misreading Tim's odd greeting. The man of the hour, Tim Walz, brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it.
Carlson appears almost baffled that anyone still takes Walz seriously. Each line is a precision strike, dipped in sarcasm and delivered with the smug calm of someone who already read the ending. Together, Gutfeld and Carlson don't just roast Walz, they incinerate the fantasy of his competence. One delivers punchlines like grenades, the other unpacks policies like a prosecutor. Gutfeld brings the comedy club, Carlson brings the courtroom, and Walz, he brings an unlimited supply of raw material. As the smoke clears, the point lingers. Failure wrapped in optimism is still failure, especially when picked apart by two of the sharpest knives in the drawer.
wedding anniversary. They were married 5 years after Tiananmen Square, and he picked that date because it was a date that they would remember, he and his wife.
What?
Who does that?
Tiananmen Square?
Correct.
The tank crushing the lone protester? That's
their wedding anniversary. And they went to China for their honeymoon.
Come on. You're sure he picked the anniversary?
They've talked about this
in
interviews. Yeah, this is in newspapers.
But Tiananmen Square was a massacre of peaceful protesters.
I know.
Do you think they picked it to in the memory of those brave souls who died opposing the machine?
They haven't said that.
Oh my God!
Because roasting Tim Walz isn't a one-time event, it's an all. Yoke and roast buffet of missteps that just keeps replenishing itself. Gutfeld circles back with the sparkle of someone who just found leftovers worth eating. He highlights Walz's talent for saying a lot while meaning nothing. The governor's speech's Gutfeld notes are like verbal confetti, colorful but meaningless. Then he mocks Walz's obsession with following the science. Not actual science, but the Instagram-friendly kind that comes prepackaged with a lab coat and yoga mat. Under Walz, Minnesota became a sandbox for half-baked climate policies passed, down by people whose idea of work is reposting infographics.
One of them, Politico says, is Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. That was
Carlson adds the final brushstrokes, exposing Walz's green energy push as both expensive and useless. The power grid folded like a lawn chair in a thunderstorm, and Walz acted like the universe betrayed him. Then Carlson digs into Walz's cozy ties with unions, pointing out how he turned government jobs into a kind of sacred cow while the private sector was left gasping. One of his appointees, a 7-Eleven manager and part-time mortuary disposal guy. The whole thing plays like improv theater with real-life consequences. Gutfeld jumps in for one last jab at Walz's tone-deaf social media, describing it like your clueless uncle lived weeding a paint-drying competition. Carlson closes by stating the real tragedy Walz thinks he's helping, but pilots Minnesota straight into the ground, not from malice, but from mistaking good intentions for actual competence. In the wreckage, the duo leaves more than scorched earthy. Leave a warning: leadership isn't about looking busy, it's about delivering when it matters.